about how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with my dad's girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I had been together for 5 months. We met through Instagram, of course. Now my dad and his girlfriend have been together for 2 years. They have a really toxic relationship. He constantly tries to make him jealous, and my dad does not trust her at all. My dad has a lot of money and women always want to date him. I mean, he has options. He doesn't need to be with this woman. When they first moved in together, my dad had a Rolex and several $1,000s go missing. He also caught her snooping around his desk one time. She denied having stolen anything, and she threatened my dad to break up with him. Of course, my dad begged her to stay. My dad's girlfriend, let's call her Annie. Annie and I started going out together. She's 10 years older than me, so we got along pretty well. My dad would ask me to keep an eye on her every time we went out. But without fail, she would flirt with every single guy at the bar. But I didn't have the heart to tell my dad. Eventually, I met my future boyfriend and we hit it off right away because we both love Harry Potter. Of course, Annie wanted to go out with us all the time. One day, I come home early from school and I find them on the couch, doing very dirty things to each other. They were full on making out. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Part 2 is up. I walk in to find my boyfriend and my dad's girlfriend full on making out on the couch. Disclaimer, is not my story time. My instinct was to pull out my phone and start recording. So I did. I knew that when I told my dad, she would deny it. So I wanted to have solid proof of this. I'd been with my boyfriend for 5 months at this point. I can't say I knew him 100%, but I never expected him to cheat on me with my dad's girlfriend. Finally, my boyfriend goes to take off his shirt and sees me. He freaks out. He basically throws her off of him. She lands on the floor. That's when she starts laughing and says that they were just playing a joke on me. No you weren't. My boyfriend told her to shut up. He then straight up ran away from my house. He told me he never wanted to see me or my effed up family again. I'm the effed up one? When my dad got home, I showed him the video of his girlfriend making out with my boyfriend. My dad went up the stairs, packed her bags, and threw her out of the house. It was raining, by the way, and he took away her car keys because he had bought her a new Tesla. But she denied everything. Part 3 is up. After my dad kicked her out, she sat in the rain with all of her bags. She kept denying that she cheated on him with my boyfriend, even though I had video proof of it. Okay, so here's the really messed up part. My dad ended up taking her back. She came back and begged him for forgiveness. And when he took her back, I just cried. It's as if she put a spell on my dad. He even gave her back the Tesla he bought her. Now that she's back in the house, I can't stand to see her. So my dad is getting me my own apartment. I love living with my dad, but I can't stand that woman. My apartment is so beautiful. I get tons of natural sunlight, and I have my friends over all the time. A little update on my ex. Remember he told me to never contact him again? He asked one of my friends for my address and they gave it to him. Yes, I was very angry at my friend, by the way. He showed up to my apartment and begged me for forgiveness. He told me that I was the best thing that ever happened to him and that he was really sorry. I asked him why he cheated on me with my dad's girlfriend, and he told me that she just has this thing, and that for some reason guys are just super attracted to her. I mean, I think this woman is a witch. He told me he couldn't control it. I'm actually considering giving him a second chance. I know I shouldn't, but I still like him. He bought me a Chanel bag and has been bringing me food every single day. I hate myself for wanting to take him back. What should I do?
Story time about how I tried to get my boyfriend back for cheating on me, but I ended up with an STD instead. So a little background information. I was dating this guy for about 7 months whenever I was in high school. And I would always hang out with him, his guy friends, and their girlfriends. Well, the one night we were hanging out at my house and he kept checking my phone. And he said it was because he was waiting for his mom to text my phone. So then he had to go to the bathroom and he asked to take my phone with him. And I said no because that's weird as fuck. So while he's in the bathroom, I get a text from a random number. And it's a bunch of videos that my boyfriend took of him doing the nasty with other girls. And there were like 15 videos, all different girls. So by this time, he's been in the bathroom for like 15 minutes. So I go to confront him while he's in the bathroom, like I do not care at this point. And he's gone. My bathroom window is wide open. My curtains are broken. So then I start to text all of his best friends. Like for part 2. Part 2. So it turns out the person who sent it to me was one of the girls in my friend group. So at that point, every single person in that friend group was dead to me and I needed to get every single one of them back. So like I said, I started texting all my ex's best friends and I asked every single one of them if they wanted to hook up. 4 of them said yes, the other 3 just blocked me. And the 4 who said yes all had girlfriends in our friend group. Well, the girls in my friend group had no idea, so they invited me to their party. And at that party, it was my mission to do the dirty with every single one of those guys. Well, there was this bathroom in the basement, which nobody knew about except the girl whose house it was. So one after the other, I did the dirty with every single one of them in that bathroom. And I made sure to snap a picture or take a video, so that way I could send it to my boyfriend. I know, I'm crazy, get over it. Well, in the morning, my ex's closest best friend came over. Well, I did the dirty with him too, because my ex hated him being around me, because he was known for screwing other people's girlfriends. Okay, there's gonna be a part 3. Part 3. So a week later, I started having some problems down there. So I had my mom take me to the doctors. Turns out I have a fucking STD. And nobody knew about it, at least not yet. Well, my boyfriend came over that same day asking if we could get back together. So I thought, what an even better way to get back at him. Give him what I have. Mind you, I was still hooking up with all 4 of his best friends. And then like 2 weeks later, my boyfriend started talking to me about how he was also having problems down there. And I was like, oh, maybe you should go to the doctors. So after he went to the doctors, he texts me and he goes, yeah, I have an STD. So then I sent him all the videos of his best friends and I said, yeah, I hope you enjoy living with that for the rest of your life. And I also gave it to all of his friends and then they spread it to their girlfriends. Payback's a bitch. Story time about how my boyfriend and I got robbed for over $3,000. And I know someone's about to be like, $3,000 isn't even a lot of money. We were both teenagers and both saved up a year's worth of paychecks for this, so it was a lot of money to us. So my boyfriend and I were looking for a car that we could use for about a year or so, and we found this one guy on Facebook. And the car looked too good for the price that he was selling it at, but I got in contact, asked him if he would meet me somewhere, and then he started being super sketchy. He was like, well, I still have to do some work on it, so can you guys come to my house? So we drove an hour away to his place, and we pull up to this apartment, and we drive around a few times, and the car is nowhere to be seen. So he meets us outside, we go in his house, super nice, offered us drinks and everything, and then he goes, okay, can I have the money now? And we're like, well, we want to see the car. And he goes, you guys can see the car after you give me the money, I just don't want to get robbed. So we give him the money, and he goes to the back to count it, like for part 2. Part 2 on my boyfriend and I getting robbed. So like I said, we gave him the money and he said he had to go to the back to count it. So I look over at my boyfriend and he's shaking his head because we already knew what was going on at this point. And as soon as I hear footsteps, I turn my head and this guy is standing there with a gun pointed in between my boyfriend and I's heads and a baseball bat in the other hand. And then he goes, okay, you guys can get the fuck out of my house now. Before we leave his house, my boyfriend's like, bro, can I at least get the money back? And of course the guy says no. So then I called the cops. And my boyfriend didn't want me to call the cops because he was like, I want to handle it my own way. But I didn't care. That was money that we worked hard for. So I got on the phone with the police. We went down to the police station. We made our statements and everything like that. And then we go back like I think a week later. And they show us a picture and they're like, oh, is this him? Well, apparently this guy had a lot of gun charges and everything like that. So he went to jail and had to do community service like for part 3. Part 3 on my boyfriend and I getting robbed. So like I said, they said that he had a lot of gun charges and so he went to jail. And I think he was only in there for 6 months because apparently he was only a teenager. So after he got out, it was like time for him to start paying us back. And I was so happy that I didn't let my boyfriend handle it his own way. I feel like this was the best revenge or whatever. He had to spend that whole summer doing community service to pay us back. And it's not like a fine where you can just pay that money back. Like, you actually have to do community service for that money. Or I'm pretty sure that's what the cops told us. But the funniest thing is we actually saw him walking in the mall with his dad whenever we got one of the paychecks because we went shopping with it. And we were walking right behind him. And my boyfriend wanted to say something. And, I was like, no, we already got the money back. Let's not do that.
Here's a story time about when I got sexually harassed by a famous showrunner in Hollywood. I find it extremely important to share these story times because I want to avoid this from happening to anyone else. And of course, I just want to get the story out there so that people can become more educated and aware. I think it's atrocious what's happening in Hollywood, and I just want to do my part. Please like and share this. I want as many people as possible to see this, and I think it's finally time for me to speak up. It was 2016, I was living by myself in Los Angeles and I was lucky enough to work as an actress. One day I was walking down Melrose Avenue and I heard a man's voice yell out, "Hey, hey," right behind me, and I turn around and right beside me is this strange man and he says, "Hey, are you an actress or a model?" I replied saying, "Yes, why?" He said, "I'd like to have a photo shoot with you." He pulled out his phone and Googled his name because he really wanted me to see how important he was in Hollywood. He insisted about 10 times that I give him my phone number, and because I just didn't have a good feeling about him, I gave him my email address instead. For the next couple of weeks, Part 2. For the next 2 weeks, he would email me almost every single day asking me when I would want to shoot. The fact that he was chasing me so much really turned me off, and I had no desire to shoot with him at all. I was honest with him though, and I said, "Look, your behavior is kind of odd, so I don't think I'm going to be able to shoot with you." He kept swearing up and down that he didn't have any bad intentions, and he sent me his website so that I could take a look at his past work, and I saw on his website that he had shot with many other models and actresses, so I thought to contact one of them. I messaged one on Instagram, but she did not get back to me. Finally, I gave him my phone number just to see what kind of vibe I would get off of text. He messages me and starts begging to set up a photo shoot. Again, this turned me off. I didn't have a good feeling. I mentioned it to my best friend and she was like, "Don't worry, just set up the photo shoot and I'll go with you. This might be a good opportunity since he's a showrunner and maybe the pictures will come out good." We set up the photo shoot and it had been about a month since we first met. That weekend, my friend and I go to his house for the photo shoot. Thank God I did not go by myself. This is where it gets disturbing. Part 3 is up. Part 3. We show up to his beautiful house with 2 Teslas in the driveway. He tells my friend to go to his office because she brought her laptop so she could do some work. We go to the backyard and we start taking some pictures. We started with headshots, nothing crazy. We shot for a total of 1 minute before he started asking me weird questions. Do you have a boyfriend? Are you married? Do you live by yourself? I answered these questions thinking it was weird, but I just said, it's okay, relax. Then he asked if I masturbated and if I fucked people. I told him to stop taking pictures and he said, why are you overreacting? What's the matter with you? I was just trying to get to know you. This is what I do with my models. Of course, he was trying to put it on me like I was the weird one. I went to my best friend and I said, we're leaving right now. And she said, what happened? Tell me now. I told her everything he had just asked me and she said, yeah, let's go. I asked him for the SD card, but he said it was his private property and I couldn't touch it. On the way back to my apartment, I felt violated. I was crying and hyperventilating. My best friend was there with me the whole time. I appreciate her so much. I call my manager and I tell him what happened and he said, well, we can't do anything against this guy. You don't want to get blacklisted.
Story time about me being the toxic best friend. So my best friend was dating this guy for about 1.5 years. And for the past 6 or 7 months, she would say that she wasn't happy, she didn't like how she was being treated, but she couldn't leave him. Well, at this time, they lived together, and that night we were supposed to decorate her apartment for her birthday party. So since she was at work, she just told me to go over her house and start decorating until she got home. Well, who happened to be there but her shitty-ass boyfriend? And him and I didn't really get along. Well, him and I were setting up and he was being super nice. Like, overly nice, which really weirded me out. Well, later on after the party, my best friend was hammered, so we both put her to bed and started cleaning up. And we were both drunk and started flirting with each other, and then one thing led to another, and I did it with my best friend's boyfriend in her house. So for the next 3 months, we have like this secret relationship, like for part 2. Part 2 to me being the toxic best friend. So like I said, him and I had this secret relationship for like 3 months straight. And I would always just go over to my best friend's house while she was working and see him then. Well, the one day she came home early from work and she walked in on her boyfriend and I in her bed. So after that, she finally got the courage to leave her boyfriend and now she's happily married. So I kind of saw it as I pushed her to do something that she knew she would never do. And after having my number blocked for like 3 years, she texts me and she says, I wanted to thank you for what you did. You showed me that I could leave my boyfriend and that you were actually just a terrible friend. But now I'm happy for her. She's living the best life that she can live, and I'm still with her ex-boyfriend.
Story time of when I unknowingly hung out with a famous actress's boyfriend. This was back in 2011. I was working at a strip club as a cocktail waitress. I had just broken up with my fiance of 1.5 years, and I was definitely ready to start seeing some people and maybe just date. And before you say what I know you're thinking, it is a bad idea to meet guys at a strip club. Don't do it. So this guy comes in with his friends. I had no idea who he was. I'd never seen his face before. I served his table the whole night, and the whole night he just wanted to talk to me. He didn't get any dances from any of the other girls, so we proceeded to talk about acting because he was also an actor. We talked about life, music, and food, blah, 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 blah. He was just so charming. He knew exactly what to say, and I was totally falling for it. Eventually, he asked me for my phone number. I gave it to him. It didn't even occur to me to ask him if he was single or not. I assumed if he was giving me his phone number, he was probably single. As soon as he leaves, he texts me and asks me if I wanted to go to a party he's hosting the following night. I said yes. So the following night, I show up at his house, and I only find him and one other guy. He said everyone else went to get drinks. It definitely scared me that I was alone with him and one other guy that I didn't know, so come back for part 2 and 3. Part 2. So because I'm with this guy at his house and I realize that I'm by myself with him and his friend and I don't know them, I get a little bit nervous and I sit down at the table and I just don't speak for a few minutes. Then I started thinking, should I just go home because this is kind of weird? I don't want to be hanging out with 2 dudes that I don't even know. By the way, this was taking place in the backyard. I hadn't been inside the house. Finally, a few minutes later, a group of friends show up and there were girls in the group, so I was like, okay, I can relax now. They went inside the house to make drinks, so he asked me if I wanted to get in the jacuzzi. I said no because I don't have a swimsuit. Then he goes inside the house, brings back a swimsuit, and he's like, don't worry, we have plenty. And by we, I thought he meant him and his friend. Stupid of me, I know, right? Then he puts his hand on my knee and tells his friend to leave to go get his drinks. His friend very obediently leaves, and I was just like, okay, that's weird. As soon as we're by ourselves, he starts trying to kiss me, and he said, hurry up, we only have a few minutes. And then I said, can you slow down? And he said, no, hurry up, we only have a few minutes. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, my friend's gonna come back soon. Obviously, it was really weird. I was really uncomfortable, and I had to keep pushing his hand off of me, which was really annoying. So I said to him, I have to go to the bathroom, come back for part.
Story time about my toxic ex-friend group. So my freshman year, I had moved to a new high school. So right away, I started being friends with this group of girls, and they were super nice. And I was also friends with this group of guys. Well, since I was friends with both groups, we all started hanging out all the time, but only whenever I was there. The boys just didn't want to hang out with the other girls. And after a few months, the girls started acting really strange. So anytime that I would hang out with the boys and not invite them, they would ignore me for a whole week. Meaning they wouldn't talk to me in school, they wouldn't answer my messages, or anything like that. Not a single one of them. And also, anytime that we hung out, they would be like, oh, invite the boys. and it was like they never wanted to hang out with me. So the one night, one of the boys was throwing a party, and I was going, and the girls asked if they could come, but they had drama with a lot of people, so the boys didn't want them coming, but I invited them anyways. Like for part 2. Part 2 to the Toxic Ex friend group story time. So, I invited them to the party, they showed up, and they were being really rude and like standoffish the whole entire night. And these girls literally hated it whenever I would hang out with the boys or talk to the boys. Come to find out that every single one of the girls had a crush on every single one of the guys that were in my friend group. Also, I'm a very friendly person and will talk to anybody, and they got pissed off whenever I was talking to anybody who wasn't them. So a little bit into the party, I start getting a lot of dirty looks from a lot of different girls that I've never even talked to. And this girl walks up to me and she's like, "Why have you been Snapchatting my boyfriend?" And I'm like, "Girl, what are you talking about?" She goes, "A few of your friends told me that you like my boyfriend and that you've been Snapchatting him and trying to get with him." So then she calls the girls over from my friend group and goes, "Didn't she tell me this?" And they're like, "Yeah, she tries to get with everybody's boyfriend." So after that, I got kicked out of both friend groups because they spread a bunch of lies and rumors about me. Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with a 17-year-old girl. So when summer started, I started working at this new job. And I had a really good connection with one of my coworkers. And he was 28 years old. So we started talking. But I would get mad at him a lot because he would ignore my messages asking to hang out. And on top of that, every time that we got done with work, we would all go sit and eat, and he would sit next to this one girl. And by the way, she was 17. And I could see them flirting all the time. Well, finally, once summer ended, she moved away. And then I felt like I had a real chance to start dating him. So we started hanging out a lot and hooking up a lot. After a few months, I started taking our relationship serious. Well, apparently not for him, because there was this girl on his phone that he had been texting a lot. So weirdly enough, after that, I get a DM from the girl that he would always flirt with at work. And she asked me if I was dating him. And I said, yeah, and then she goes, "Oh, well, he's been texting me a lot." So then I blocked her and went and hooked up with one of his friends that night, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was cheating on me with a 17-year-old girl. So like I said, I hooked up with his friend that night, but I didn't tell him for a couple months because he would always say that we weren't dating, even though we were basically in a relationship. So we were doing really good until around Christmas time. So after he gave me my gifts, which was socks and a candle, he left for Massachusetts. I don't know if I said that right. And a month before this, I had unblocked the girl that he was flirting with. So weirdly enough, after he left, she DM'd me, basically asking if I was still dating him again. And I was like, yeah, why? And she goes, well, I need to tell you something. He actually took my virginity, and he's been sending me a lot of gifts, like a record player and albums, and we've been talking on the phone every night. So when I confronted him about it, he said he felt bad for her because he took her virginity. So after that, I confessed to hooking up with his best friend and called him a child predator.
Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set, he was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model. Of course, I was so in love. I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part two. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought it's okay, he can work at the movie theater, and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. Owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a 3rd job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night, I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first, he was supportive, but after a few days, he basically told me to get over it. Part 3. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. The final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you.
Crazy story time about how I found my aunt and my boyfriend hooking up at a family function. So every year my mom and stepdad would have a Christmas party and everyone from both sides of the family would come. And I also invited my boyfriend. And at this time, my boyfriend and I were both juniors in high school. So everybody came to the party and everything was going good. Well, like an hour into the party, all the adults were super drunk. So before we all opened gifts, I decided to help my mom clean up dinner. So while I'm washing the dishes, I look over and my aunt and boyfriend are talking a lot. And she started to get really touchy with him, but I didn't think anything of it because she was super drunk. So after I'm done cleaning up, we all started opening gifts. And my boyfriend goes up to my room to go get his phone off the charger. And after he went upstairs, my aunt was like, oh, I need to go throw up. So about 10 minutes goes past and my boyfriend's still up in the room grabbing his phone, so I went to check on him. And I walk upstairs to see my aunt and my boyfriend laying on my bed making out. Like for part 2. Part 2 to how I caught my aunt and my boyfriend hooking up at a family function. So like I said, they are laying on my bed making out. Doors wide open, they don't even bother to shut the door. And both of their shirts are off. And I think I should just put in here, my aunt is like 28. She's on my stepdad's side. She's really young. So they look up and my aunt's just like drunk as fuck looking at me. And she's like, do you want to join? Like, bitch, what the fuck? So I'm just like shook and I start screaming. Everybody rushes up the stairs and my mom pushes me out of the way and sees my boyfriend and my aunt laying on my bed with their shirts off. So my mom starts screaming at everybody. So my mom calls the cops, says that an adult is touching an underage boy, and she calls his mom, tells her what happened. So my boyfriend and I broke up, so that spread around the whole school, and word got out that they actually started seeing each other. Crazy story time about how my sister and I found out that we were hooking up with the same guy. So I was a freshman, my sister was a sophomore, and there was this really cute guy in her grade that I liked. But I could never find a way to talk to him because we weren't in the same grade and had none of the same classes. And my sister and I were not close at all. Like, we didn't tell each other shit. We didn't really talk to each other or anything. So by that being said, we never told each other about the boys that we liked. We just didn't have that bond. Well, track season came around. So they called all the people down who wanted to do track. And I saw him walk past my classroom window, so I decided to go too. So I signed up for track and him and I started to talk a little bit. We exchanged numbers. And he was popular, I wasn't, so he didn't want to be seen with me. So after attendance, we would go to this graveyard right by the track and hook up. Well, the next day we had a meet in our school. So him and I went to the graveyard, hooked up, and that's when it started getting crazy, like for part 2. Part 2. So on our way back from doing our thing, we had saw a group of kids that were behind this bush and they were chiefing. And we didn't think that they saw us because we were like, oh, they're just smoking, like whatever. So I go back to the meet, everything is good until the end of the meet. One of my best friends sends me this picture that I guess somebody posted on their story. And it was a picture of me and the kid hooking up. And next thing I know, my sister is blowing up my phone. And like I said, my sister and I didn't have a good bond, so I didn't give a shit what she had to say because I didn't know. So then I got home. And as soon as I walked into my room, my sister was literally waiting there for me. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, him and I are in a relationship. And I'm like, bitch, what the fuck? And she was like, well, it's on the down low, but we're in a relationship. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're a whore. So then she decides to drive both of us over to his house. So we all decided to just stay away from each other. But then they got back together. So I just figured that wasn't fair and I'm still hooking up with him while they're together. Crazy ass story time about how my best friend's parents walked in on me sleeping with my best friend's brothers. And yes, I said brothers. So my freshman year, I became best friends with this girl. And she had 2 older, hot-ass brothers. One was in college, and one was a senior. Well, it was Christmas break, and her older brother from college was home. And my parents let me go with them to Florida for Christmas break. They had a super nice beach house, and I was sharing a room with my best friend. And the boys were sharing a room. And our room was connected because there was a bathroom in the middle. Well, my best friend got super sick the first 3 days of the trip, so she didn't do anything with us. So I was hanging out with the boys all the time. Well, the one night we were on the deck and we started to play Truth or Dare. And one of them asked, "Would you sleep with us?" And I said, yeah. So at around 3 a.m., I snuck into the room and things started to get real nasty. There are kids on this app, so just use your imagination. And things started to get really loud and we woke their parents up, for part two. Part two. So we thought that we woke their parents up and we heard someone walking up the stairs. So I ran into the bathroom, hid, and they asked if everything was okay. And I was just like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I think I caught whatever my best friend has. So they went back downstairs and we thought they went back to sleep. They were never asleep. So we decided to go onto the deck and finish the nastiness that we were doing. And I was like, oh, okay, we don't have to be that quiet now. Because their bedroom was in the front of the house and the porch was on the back of the house. And we were on the second floor, and below that there was another porch with a fire pit and everything. And I could see below us. Well, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody walk into the house. But stupid me, I just ignored it. Not even a minute later, I hear the sliding door open. And I hear, and we all turn around and everybody's standing there. So they sent me home and told my parents. But I didn't get grounded because low-key my mom knew I was a hoe.
Here's a story time about when my coworker pulled out a knife on me. It sounds so dramatic, but it's true. Back in 2010, I got hired as a waitress at a hookah lounge in Glendale, California. I was trained by the lead server. I'm going to call her Leslie. Leslie was really cool at first, and we got along pretty well. She was also an aspiring model like me, but the difference was that I had already gotten some modeling work and I had representation, and so she would ask me about how to get an agent and I would give her as much information as I could. I was very happy to help her. Our main job was to upsell hookahs, and the bosses noticed that I was pretty good at it, so within a few weeks they were congratulating me and being very vocal about how happy they were that I was working there. I could tell that this made Leslie a little bit jealous, and she quickly became very cold towards me. Whenever I entered a room, she would start talking bad about me on purpose so that I could hear her talking bad about me, and because I wouldn't react the way she wanted to, she would get very upset. She began to poison the servers against me and even the cooks in the kitchen. I then got a raise and the bosses told me in front of her, and this made her even more upset. She clearly had some issues and I felt bad for her, but it didn't give her the right to treat me like that. This is where it gets scary. Come back for part two. My coworker, who I'm calling Leslie, was very envious of the fact that I was doing well at the job and that the bosses were happy with me. I had also gotten a raise and I was making as much money as she was, and she had been there for a very long time. She would talk bad about me as soon as I came into the room, and she would make sure I would hear her, and it got so bad that I would ask her a question and she would flat out ignore me, pretend like I just wasn't even there. I couldn't work like that any longer, so I went up to the bosses and I told them what was happening, and they were not surprised. They basically said, it's okay, don't worry about it, just ignore her, she'll get over it. And they told me that they were going to talk to her. They told me not to worry, and I went home. The following morning, I wake up early and I go to the hookah lounge because I had the opening shift. As soon as I pull up to the hookah lounge, I see her car parked, and it was the only one there, which told me I was going to be by myself with her. I walk in and I see that she's sitting at a table with one of the other guy servers who's completely in love with her and will do anything she wants. They see me come in and they start walking very fast toward me. She starts yelling that I have cellulite, that I have back knee, that I'm too short, that I'll never make it as an actress. Come back for part 3, it gets scary. Part 3. My coworker Leslie is yelling at me, telling me I have cellulite, I have back knee, that I'm short, that I'll never make it as an actress or a model, and the guy that's standing right next to her is our coworker, and he's totally in love with her and will do anything she wants. He chimes in every now and then and starts calling me a bitch and other names. She's also doing the same. Every time I would try to say something, they would both interrupt me and she would just yell louder and louder. I didn't know what to do, so I started walking backwards toward my car. The other coworker, I'll call him Mark. Mark had something in his hand and I couldn't really tell what it was. Then he pulls up his hand and I see that he has a pocket knife. I was ready to poo my pants, you guys. She starts laughing at me because she can tell that I'm really scared, and he's just laughing as well. He called me a rat because I told the bosses about what she did. She said that this needed to be fixed between her and I, no one else. I got mad and I said, well then why do you have Mark here with a knife? I told her we could just talk about things, and I asked him to leave and he said no. I tried talking some sense into them, but they just were not listening to me whatsoever. They were just so angry. Come back for part 4. Part 4. So I'm standing in the parking lot and my coworker Leslie is yelling her face off at me, and my other coworker Mark has a knife in his hand. I'm sobbing at this point because I'm terrified. Obviously, who wouldn't be? I managed to get the car door open and I slid inside really quick. I closed the door behind me and then she started banging on the window and she told me to come out. I didn't. I turned on my car and I sped away. I called my bosses right away and I was like, look, this just happened. Check your security cameras. They checked the security camera and they saw the whole thing. They said they were in shock, that they didn't know that she was capable of such a thing, and that they didn't even think that it would occur to her to get someone else involved with a knife. But guess what? They didn't fire her. They told me to go back to the restaurant so that she could apologize to me because they were afraid that I was going to press charges and that the hookah lounge would suffer. And I went back to the hookah lounge because I didn't want to lose my job, and I thought, you know what? I'll just accept her apology and that'll be it. She was begging me for forgiveness. She cried and she told me that she wishes she never said anything to me and that she thought I was very pretty and that she apologized for getting Mark involved. Mark didn't say anything to me and he didn't get fired. Neither of them did. I quit.
Story time about how my boyfriend was cheating on me with my stepsister. So a little background information, my mom remarried whenever I was in 8th grade, and my stepdad had 2 daughters. One which was my age and we got along really well. Well, before my sisters and I went back to school, my mom wanted to go on a camping trip with everyone. And my boyfriend was coming because he was really close with my family. So while my stepsister and I are packing up, she starts acting really weird. And we're gonna call my boyfriend Kevin. She was like, "Oh, is Kevin still coming with us?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then she goes, "Oh, are you and Kevin still together?" And I'm like, "We were never broken up. Like, the fuck?" Like I said, she was just being super fucking weird. But anyways, we all get in the car, we drive up there, and her and Kevin start being super weird around each other. Like, they were being too touchy. Anytime that I wanted to go do something with Kevin, she would say, "Oh, Kevin, you can come do this instead." Well, that night, Kevin and I are sleeping in our tent. At least I thought he was. And I wake up to some loud noises in the other tent, like for part 2. Part 2. So like I said, I heard a bunch of noises and talking in my stepsister's tent. And I wake up and my boyfriend isn't in the tent. So I be very quiet getting out of my tent, and I go over to hers and I just listen. And oh bitch, I should have just confronted them because I got my motherfucking feelings hurt. He was telling her how he didn't love me at all and how he only wanted to be with her, and how every time that they kissed each other and screwed each other, he felt such a connection between them. So not only was he cheating physically, but they had a connection. Wonderful. So I open her tent and I confront them. This was the most degrading thing I've ever went through in my life. And I said, "I heard you guys outside. And I'm just not the type of girl who's going to come at another girl because my man wants her. Because at that point, he's not my man." She goes, "Sit down, sweetie. We need to talk." Apparently, they're in love. So they started dating. They're still dating. And my parents allowed it. So I distanced myself from all of them.
Story time about when my crazy celeb ex made me take a drug test because he thought I was cheating on him and stealing his drugs. Most of you already know who I'm talking about, but if you don't, he's on TV right now. Leave your guesses in the comments. At this point, we had been together about 6 months, but every time we would break up, one of us would go back. It was a very toxic cycle, but I was definitely ready to leave him at this point. I was just scared and I didn't know how to do it. He had this thing about his closet where he never left the door open and I could never go in. And he would specifically tell me not to go into his closet. He even carried his closet keys or hid them when I was around. Well, this one time I'm just chilling at his house and he comes up to me and he says, "Why did you open my safe?" And I said, "I can't even get into your closet where the safe is because I don't have keys. How would I be able to get into your safe without the combination?" Then he takes me into the closet, opens the safe, and shows me what's in there. And it's a bunch of illegal stuff that I really didn't know was there. Of course, I started to get really nervous and scared. And he accused me of stealing money and drugs and giving it to my pimp because he had a theory that I was an escort or a prostitute. And he said he couldn't trust me any longer and took me to CVS to get a drug test. Come back for part 2. Part 2. So he takes me to CVS, and on the way there, he's yelling and telling me that if I don't pass this test, we're totally through. I told him that I would pass the test for sure, but that we were through anyway. He said he was convinced that I was a drug addict and that he needed to get away from me. Mind you, he's the one with the closet full of drugs. We get to CVS, I'm bawling my eyes out and my hands and knees are trembling. As we're entering the CVS, this man comes up to us, out of nowhere, like an angel. And he says to me, "Are you okay? Do you need some water?" And then he looks at my ex and he's like, "Hey, maybe you guys need to, sit down and talk things through." Of course, my ex answered for me and he said, "No, she's fine, don't worry." I must have looked like I needed help. The man kept close and stood at the register the whole time, kind of watching us. We got the drug test and then he rushed me back to the car. We drive back in silence to his house. And the whole time I'm just thinking, I don't need this, just leave him. I pee on the stick and then I give it back to him. He starts crying and saying that it's over because he knows it's going to come back positive. I got my things in line. 2 days later, he comes to my apartment and he's really angry. Come back for part 3. Part 3, knocks on my door, I open, and the look on his face is just of pure anger. He throws the drug test results on the couch and says, "How did you pass?" And I said, "I don't do drugs." He watched me pee, you guys. He watched me pee on that stick. He said I must have taken something and there was no way I could pass the test. Then I just started yelling at him and I told him to get out. You guys, he was shocked. I had never kicked him out of my apartment before. He was shocked. Then he started crying and he said, I can't believe you're kicking me out of your apartment. And I told him, you made me go to CVS, take a drug test, I passed the test and you're still mad? You're never gonna trust me and this isn't gonna work. He said, of course we can work on it, you just have to stop lying to me. After I kicked him out, I felt relief. I thought it could really be over. A few days later, he calls me apologizing and crying, begging me to go back. When you're in love and you start seeing red flags, you just will do anything to ignore them. I did. Don't do the same thing.